Well, I obviously am not Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm sorry if you're disappointed and you're joining this morning and Sarah is not here. She is otherwise occupied, so she's turned it over to me. I am Christine Barnhart. You might have caught me before on Thoughts and Coffee with Sarah or Let's Talk Supply Chain. I also host Supply Chain Unfiltered on the Let's Talk Supply Chain platform. So hopefully you're not completely disappointed and we can have a great conversation this morning. Full disclosure, we're a little freaked out. We're having some technical difficulties, so it's going to be a minute or two before my guest joins us. But you know what? I'm a redhead. I think we can manage it. So, first, I want to remind everybody that there is a new Let's Talk Supply Chain episode out this week with Chad Ditburner of Werner. He's going to talk about, if you watch it, supply chain sustainability, kind of what the challenges are, alternative fuels, costing, partnerships, and really about transportation and how that can yield a strategic advantage. You are not going to want to miss it. It's a really, really great episode. I think you guys will really, really enjoy it. So I think that we might actually be ready to introduce you to my esteemed guest, Mr. Pedro Neto.
Hello, everyone.
Yay!
Thanks for having me, Christine.
Hello. I know it's super early for you this morning, Pedro, and I
No
am
big deal.
so,
Yeah.
so sorry for the technical difficulties. So, um, Pedro, you are with HP, Hewlett Packard, and we've known each other for a while. And I know that you're a data scientist, but I will not do your introduction justice. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so very happy to. So first and foremost, I've been a math nerd and a supply chain fan even before I knew those two really could come together ever since I can remember. So in my day job at HP, I'm able to combine both of them and I help our organization and our internal customers transform. And I'm especially proud of my time on ASCM, where I'm able to get exposure to all the different colleagues and the businesses that and organizations that we help to support. So, yeah, I really love the balance. I'm able to be really techy and nerdy and work with Python code, and then, really partner with you and the other board members on leadership when I get to see the rest of you guys.
And I love it. So, full disclosure to the audience, Pedro and I started our term on the Association of Supply Chain Management board at the same time. So, we're just finishing our third year. It has really been delightful to get to know you. And he is always the person in the room that's like pushing us to think about data and insights and analytics and artificial intelligence in a different way, and personally I love it. I think it's great. I'm super excited that we've become friends so that we can stay connected even when my term ends at the end of the year. So um and on that note, because you are always insightful, maybe just a minute or two on, like, what are you seeing in the market, Pedro? Like, what's happening from your perspective? What are you excited about in terms of data analytics, AI, kind of that whole geeky, the supply chain nerd side?
Yeah, so one of the particular things I've been really excited is that if you think about all the different AI use cases that are available, we get a lot of these shiny demos where we see, music and videos and a lot of different apps that are like really important for consumers. And I'm really excited that that wave of excitement is coming into the enterprise, right? You always just have seen a gap between, well, I can do so much on like my personal ChatGPT account, or I've seen all these cool things and what other people are doing. But it's like, okay, what do I actually do on my day-to-day job? Like I have this spreadsheet, I have this template, I need to do X. And you can always find some pundits that are able to wow you and show you what to do. But we're starting to see that wave of going into workplace apps and SaaS where people are doing their everyday work. And it's very exciting. Even with products that I've been experiencing that I'll test maybe 6 months ago, and I'm like, okay, XYZ agent and AI for that was no longer good. It's kind of a little bit of like fourth dimensional chess, and even for myself, sometimes it can be head spinning where, if you try one model, it gets better, but you're also learning more on how to better use AI, or then someone gives you like this other use case. So I've just
Oh
been
yeah.
excited by how humbled I've been by, every combination of trying a different app and use case and using some prompting and thinking creatively can get a very different outcome. I've
It
heard I've heard this said before, so not original to me. I think it was Ethan Mollick, University of Pennsylvania, but I think he made said somewhere in the post that if all AI technology were to just put on an embargo, just like, okay, blackout, it would probably take us as a human species, not even us as an industry supply chain, but as a human species, over 50 years to just really digest what it means for us into our work. So yeah, the pace of change, it's very exciting.
it is exciting. And it's interesting that you talk about that. I'm perhaps a little bit addicted now to ChatGPT. I use it both personally and professionally for pretty much everything. I have my husband using it. I'm like tracking my skincare on it. Like it's crazy to me. And it gives me such great suggestions that I mean I could have probably done a ton of research and I may still not have gotten like to what I needed. So I know a lot of people they're like hesitant, but I'm like you just have to jump in and I agree with you. My ability to ask it questions and give it prompts and whatnot so much better now than what it was a few weeks ago. I'll ask it something and it doesn't, and I'm like, okay, this is not what I was wanting, right? And so I think I'm learning, it's learning and I'm learning together, and I really love that, and I think it demystifies the process a bit as well.
Yeah, totally. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we're going to jump into a bit of a poll question. So I believe that Sarah sent this to you in advance,
Mhm.
but every week she does a poll question. And this week the question is around tomato tariffs. So tariffs are causing major price hikes and disruptions in the fresh produce supply chain, and particularly tomatoes are ground zero, which for me is not a problem because you know me and I don't like tomatoes. But you know what? I know a lot of people that really love tomatoes. So as costs soar, and retailers are scrambling and consumers are starting to feel the pinch, how are you, how like you as either a consumer or you looking in the context of HP, how are you managing this kind of disruption? So, Pedro, for you personally, what would you pick?
Yeah, if there was an all of the above, I would try that. And I don't mean to be flippant, but if you ever look at any challenge that any company has been dealing with, the supply chain to being resilient, it's very rare that there's a silver bullet, right? And any effort, whether diversifying suppliers or pricing, implementing tech solutions, or just managing your inventory, these all take time. They take supplier collaboration. They take RFPs. They take the market to digest. All of these take a little bit of time, and I don't think any organization can afford to not do all of the
All
above.
of the
Now,
above.
of course,
Yeah,
of course, you can prioritize and see, but I think we're all in this world of adjusting to a new normal. We adjusted to a new normal when we moved our, collectively as a country, our supply chains overseas. We adjusted to a new normal as we dealt with the pandemic. And we look about that, we really adjusted quickly and then adjusted back. And this is just the latest of a long line of different adjustments. I think that this does put additional pressure for people to be on their toes and be creative, right? Anytime that there is any forcing function, you're going to, that project that you thought about putting robotics to harvest tomatoes or to do an assembly line, it's just like, okay, things are just a little bit more expensive. The ROI of that project is going to be a little bit different. A little bit similar on this kind of it's an equilibrium of these ROI calculations. You
Right.
come up with a project idea, maybe it doesn't work, but then fast forward, okay, your costs are bigger, but then maybe some of your other input costs are a bit lower, and it's a different dynamic. So we were just talking with Craig, the chief supply chain officer at OWN, and they're actually able to make a manufacturing line work in Switzerland, which if anyone has been to Switzerland, it's one of the most expensive places on earth, and they're able to make robotic manufacturing work. And he was just talking about just how the costs of robotics have just really
Yeah.
come down. So if they were able to figure it out, and they're selling a premium product, they're offering what that extra value is for that consumer, which is a really important play. Do you really want really cheap tomatoes from Florida every year that really don't have as much flavor as like and I am biased, a New Jersey grown tomato. Well, maybe that New Jersey grown farm fresh tomato should be a little bit more expensive and be more of a premium product,
Right.
right? And if you're in the fast food industry, right, a consumer may not necessarily care, right? And they're
Yeah.
okay with that. But maybe
Yeah.
there's
I
less
think
tomatoes in our food if you're having trouble getting them, right?
I think what I'm hearing is that supply chain doesn't have the luxury of picking one tactic or one strategy. In order to be effective and successful, we really have to be looking kind of holistically at all the levers, which is why I think AI is so exciting, right? Because humans, I read an article once that said humans can really only see two-way interactions. Maybe some like really, really like there's some outliers, but artificial intelligence, the machine can identify three and four-way interactions pretty regularly. So yeah, I love that. So I want to say, okay, I might mess up the name, but hi, Violetta. She said hi to us in the chat. So I want to give her a shout out. We appreciate people interacting in the chat. So as we're having our conversation today, if you have a question or just want to throw out a comment, please feel free to do so in the chat. I don't know where Violetta's from, but I am in the middle of the country and you're on the West Coast, right, Pedro?
Yep, San Francisco.
I know he got up super early today and then had technical issues. I feel so bad. So
No big deal.
so, for those people that maybe haven't watched Thoughts and Coffee before, Sarah generally preps her speakers with articles, and she always picks one or two that are really interesting. And one of them that she sent Pedro and I was Behind the Iron Curtain, an AI Marshall Plan. And so, just a little bit of a refresher for everyone in case you have forgotten like world history. The Marshall Plan was the European recovery plan that was led by the U.S. post World War II, and through it, the U.S. And the U.S. alone invested over $13 billion in the rebuilding the Western Europe infrastructure. So the article suggests that we really need an AI Marshall Plan. And it argues, Pedro, that public and private sectors really need to coordinate investment to stay competitive globally. What's your perspective on this? How do you see AI shaping the future of global supply chains? And where is the biggest gap, in your opinion, between ambition and like implementation or execution?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest gaps just overall is that, there's a really large barrier to be the shapers of this technology. So, if you're looking to build a data center, there's all the big tech companies. I think Google released their CapEx. They're going to be spending like north of $80 billion this year. If you're one of these labs who are creating some of these frontier models, you're even above government scale, right? You see the just the need for chips, how expensive those are. You need to be spending tens of billions of dollars a year even to get the top talent to help these models. There's an AI talent war, and Meta just announced that I had a handful of people, but they're going to pay over $200 million for a researcher he's gonna actually make more money in Meta than Tim Cook over at Apple. And there's just a gap of, I think, society really um, understanding and using this technology. And there's also a gap of how is this actually going to implement and shake out in society? Like we can, talk about how it's going to change our work lives, how we're going to make things better, um, but people are really starting to talk about how is this going to help or hurt people with automation? What does the meaning of work really mean?
Yeah,
Like if you're a knowledge worker who is shuffling data back and forth, you're at a very big risk, right? Versus if you're a nurse and actually doing physical IV stuff, right? Sure, there might be some robotics, but you're going to be a little bit safer. And when I think about this Marshall Plan, where I think there's an opportunity, and I think a lot of people agree, is that some things are too important to be completely self-organized, right? If we just have society, job training, people losing jobs, but other people are gaining jobs, and we're competing with adversaries of what these models can do and we're approaching where these models are not really slowing down in capabilities.
right,
It's really tough to predict where all those things kind of fit together. And I think with our newest administration, they just made it a very top priority where, we just want to win the AI race. They're lowering barriers to create permitting for data centers, trying to get new energy on, and just really incentivizing these companies to go
right.
as quickly as possible. But it's going to take a really long time for us as a society. And I think the softer side of what politicians need to look to regulate, it's very hard for what is the average age of a congressman and senate, but it has to be north of 70 years old. It's going to be tough for them to really
Yeah.
digest what does this really mean for our broader society.
Although I will say, and I do love that we're trying to lower the barrier. I would love to see us work more congruently with our traditional allies. Canada, Europe, Australia, Southeast Asia, to because I think that's what the Marshall Plan did, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't just, yes, the US led the construction of the plan and we had a significant investment, but in general, we moved society forward in that time frame because it was this kind of conglomeration of nations working together for the betterment of everyone. And I do think that in order to be successful in the realm of AI, we have to have that mindset. It's humans working with automation and machines, and humans working with each other, right? In order to be successful.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the other article that she gave to us were 3 tips for dealing with tariffs from a supply chain expert. Um, the article suggests that in today's trade environment, flexibility is a superpower, especially for small to medium sized businesses. But from your vantage point at HP, how does a large company like yours approach supply chain agility when tariffs and political, shifts are really disrupting what it is you do, from a day-to-day standpoint?
Yeah, so even just to take a little bit step back, even just beyond HP, just to think, a little bit similar answer to us talking about the tomatoes. This is just another, barrier that makes things more difficult. It's another challenge. But we as
Right.
supply chain industry have been, dealing and know how to deal with different. I think what's a little bit unique is just the speed of the different changes and how you can make certain plans for a particular set of outcomes and then just wake up in the news and a little bit different. But this also is an opportunity where I also think about there's like an absolute level of like, okay, my supply chain is now harder. How am I going to, to make my numbers and then fulfill my orders? But it's also relative basis, right? So if you are more agile, you have better strategies, you've come up with different creativity, you can actually have a competitive edge over other individuals. I heard of one story in the news a couple of months ago where it actually forced a small business to actually expand more globally, where it just their product did not make sense. They could not import any tooling from China, and they've successfully said, you know what, we're going to move overseas and sell our product globally. And you know, sure, do they wish that they would have could stayed in the US? Sure, maybe they can come back, but it did mean that they were able to compete in other
Right.
markets and think in other ways. But at the same time, though, just sitting here on the other side, it's also difficult and just to recognize the challenge that it's large companies, small, medium businesses, and there's no silver bullet, but the common trait that and just mentioned in the article that you mentioned is just that flexibility, that agility, that resilience. Those are going to be muscles using digital tools combined with that regardless of what the tariffs are, we can get a whole new administration, they all get scrapped away. But having those muscles will
Right.
always serve companies well.
So it gets back to what is it? Necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And so when you have a
Exactly.
problem, you got to figure out how to solve that problem. That's I think where human ingenuity, we're gonna keep trying until we figure it out, right? So kind of on that note, because I know that you do a lot of models, right? A lot of modeling, like, and we haven't really got into that, but like when we think about these trade-offs that are required in order to be flexible and to be agile, how can data science help us do this? Help us, look at all of the different options,
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really excited and one of the best use cases for these AI models is that they're actually really good at programming. And what that means is that people who don't know how to code or only learn a little bit, they
right?
actually have a whole new world of things that they can do. Some people call it vibe coding, where you can just, tell your favorite AI model to create an app. But if you think about, there's this demand and supply where to create software was only a concentrated, a small number of people that could really create it. And therefore, the demand for that was just set of where that price is. Well, the cost to create software engineering and to create apps and to create it quickly, today I'm able to prototype things that would have taken me 1 to 2 weeks, and I'm able to do it within 10 seconds. Is it going to be as good? No, but just the speed that I can learn from it. I saw this one story. I think it was a tech VP overseas, and he just showed a video of 7-year-olds just creating iPhone apps. And that was like the first time using a computer, and they were just using AI models and just the creativity to think about things. So I think just the demand to make things quickly, try them out. Like if you wanted to build a website, uh, you know, you can do that within one day, and it can be really good enough. So I think it's just going to open up so much creativity that billions of people today have been locked in.
And so, what's the balance there, Pedro, between what you can create in terms of an application to solve a problem versus looking to, an industry expert or, like a technology company that's been solving problems? Like, is there a place for both?
Definitely a place for both. But in this rapid change environment, I'm personally a little bit more biased to, if you just think about a make versus buy framework, I'm really looking at those providers that can be really flexible and adaptable themselves. And I'll just give kind of two generic extreme examples. If someone built a very expensive and heavy duty AI system or software system that is kind of locked in with today's technology, even if I'm super impressed with those results for just how quickly things are changing, within 3 months, it might be less valuable, right? Versus somewhere else where it's like, okay, I'm natively doing work in here. This is something that can keep improving as there are new capabilities. Maybe I pay as a subscription, and maybe one day I wake up with new features, even though that may be a little bit less valuable than that solution today, but just because that's on a different growth curve, I'm going to really much prefer that. I got given this advice just meeting with AI people in San Francisco. It's kind of this litmus test in the VC's world of how do you know if a company is going to be successful? And you ask them the question, are you excited for the day when these AI models are 1,000 times more powerful? And if they're are nervous and if they're trying to compete with hundreds of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars of investments to come up with through, that's a David and
Right.
Goliath situation. But if they're going to ride that wave and be excited that like, yes, our product will be even better if the foundational models become better, that I'm much more willing to get excited and put real dollars on and trying out.
I love it. No, that's great. And I'm kind of with you. Like for me, I'm really looking at companies that are data forward more so than like rigid architecture forward. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing to make sure that you're capturing the right data, and new pieces of data and new kinds of data and making that data easily accessible to the companies that you're working with? Because if it's a huge challenge to get to the data, then what the hell am I paying you for, quite frankly, right? Like how are you helping me? So no, I love that. So I want to like our time is almost done, and I have a vision for how I'm going to end this. But I want to ask you a question. It kind of leads to kind of where we're going. So we said at the beginning that you and I both work with ASCM. We're longtime ASCM folks. And when I think about associations and companies like ASCM, how do they fit in kind of this new, data rich, ever evolving landscape of supply chain?
Yeah, so two pieces. So one is, we've talked about flexibility, adaptability, resilience, but it also applies to individuals. And if we, as our own learners and managing our own careers, can really make sure that we stay up to date with not only the latest technology, but with the secret sauce that we provide. If you are someone in your career that has a lot of domain knowledge, your particular field, and our field is obviously supply chain, you can multiply your effectiveness with AI tools. But the reverse is very different, very difficult. Like if you take someone who is in their 60s, like and they just have a lot of domain expertise and know how to ask the right questions. Within a week or two, they can learn these AI tools and systems and really solve great problems. But
Perfect.
it's very hard for the reverse. So if you're a young employee, it's hard to get that experience. So being connected with the best practices in a domain of expertise where there's real problems to solve, we're all going to be in a world where that is going to be our secret sauce. And, using these models and data and tools, they're not the most important piece. They're just the facilitators for us to do real work. And ESCM, by providing those educational products as well as the community for us to come together to learn and grow better together, it's actually more important. Like I consider myself, an AI expert and data scientist, of course, but that foundational knowledge of like, okay, what the heck am I actually solving and doing?
Yep.
That's actually the most important piece to me.
So, the reason I asked that question is because we've reached the end of the show and it's time to tell people where they can find us, where they can find Sarah, and how to get in touch. So, for me, the best way to get in touch with me is LinkedIn. Pedro, is that true for you as well?
Yep.
And then you can find Pedro and I at the ASCM conference in September in Columbus. It's rebranded called Change now. We hope you'll join us. But if you're looking for Sarah, you can find Sarah in Long Beach in middle of September at the IANA Pickleball Slam 2025. I am super jealous, Sarah, because you know that I'm a pickleball fanatic. So we're going to be looking for updates from Sarah out of Long Beach. And if you miss her in Long Beach, I highly recommend looking at Visibility Now 2025. It's the first week in November in Paris, France. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Paris, right? So, um, but you'll find us in Columbus. So come see us in Columbus. This has been so great, Pedro. Thank you so much. And I hope that our audience, learned something today. I know I always do. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, folks, we'll see you on the flip side.